This one's for my creation out of nothing friends. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. The problem? Genesis 1 doesn't actually support creation out of nothing. Welcome back to Pesky Passages, where your favorite doctrines face serious challenges and we learn to ask better questions along the way. Let's read Genesis 1 together. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Now the earth was formless and empty. Darkness was over the surface of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the waters. And God said, "Let there be light." You know the story. But what if it wasn't actually the beginning? What if the Bible opens, like any good Tarantino movie, in the middle of the action, mid-story, mid-sentence? This is exactly the conclusion that modern scholars have come to. Let's take a closer look at the traditional English translation. What you might not know is that it's actually using some artistic liberties to help smooth over some strange and unusual things happening in the Hebrew. Side note, translation and advisory committees, the scholars, theologians, pastors from a particular denomination or theological community, they can often, intentionally or unintentionally, be guilty of preserving inaccurate readings that align more with their dogmas instead of the more grammatical or contextual realities of what that original text preserved. This usually happens because they are beholden to a particular faith tradition or doctrinal statement that they have to adhere to. What this inevitably leads to is us having their interpretive choices put into the Bible, which then leads us to reading their interpretations as the actual, literal, inspired Word of God. Make a mental note. You'll start to see this more and more the deeper we dig into these Bible passages. But I digress. Let's go back and take a look at the Hebrew.
בראשית ברא אלוהים את השמיים ואת האורץ.
Not committed to any particular theological camp, this passage can more befittingly be translated as, when God began to create the heavens and the earth. The Hebrew word bereshit indicates an independent clause, not a standalone sentence. And when we read it in context with verse 2 and beyond, it starts to fall into place. When God began to create heaven and earth, the earth being unformed and void, with darkness over the surface of the deep and a wind from God sweeping over the water, God said, "Let there be light." Genesis 1 doesn't start at the beginning of space-time, bringing all things into existence. It starts mid-project, God at the face of the already existing chaotic waters, ready to perform his creative act. God then spends the rest of Genesis 1 creating by gathering and separating, providing form and function, purpose and meaning, all while using pre-existing materials. Don't believe me? Swipe to my next video. There, we will read the entirety of the first creation account as found in Genesis 1:1 through Genesis 2:4a. So how would have the original authors conceptualized God's creative power if not the beginning of matter, space, and time? Was the Genesis account ever supposed to be able to answer the scientific and metaphysical questions that we're asking of it today? What in fact was the ancient Near Eastern cosmology? How do other creation myths from the surrounding peoples give us more insight? If the ancient Israelites didn't adhere to creation out of nothing, where did this idea even come from? Could the opening of the Bible be inviting us not to solve mystery, but to live within it? I don't know about you, but I always end up with more questions than answers. If you love reading the Bible and want to learn to ask better questions, come along. You're welcome here.